Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you do not know, and it's time for me to tell you a true crime story while I sip wine. Let's go. So as y'all can see, I already been drinking on my wine, sipping and dipping. I'm sorry guys. It's just so good. So today I'm going to be talking about Madeline Carmichael. Now, I heard this story a couple of years ago and it has always just sat with me. Like this one stuck. Like a lot of them do stick with me, but this one I think about quite often. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and share it with my people. So here we are. In 1999, when Cash Money Records was taken over for the 99 and the 2000, Madeline Carmichael was living at 94 Rockaway Parkway in Brooklyn, New York. All of her children were grown, so she was living by herself. She didn't have a husband or anything like that. But she was just a regular old neighbor, just one of those old ladies who pretty much kept to herself. She didn't bother nobody. Nobody bothered her. She had her regular complaints here and there, but there was nothing major, nothing spectacular about her, nothing unspectacular either. It was just like like I said, she was just an old lady who lived in this apartment building for years and years and years. Everybody knew her. She pretty much knew everybody. But like I said, she kept to herself and she didn't bother nobody and nobody bothered her child. And good thing they didn't. Because what her neighbors didn't know was that Madeline wasn't as sweet as she seemed. So we're going to have to take it back to 1979, y'all. So we still in Brooklyn, but we just back in the day. Madeline is still living in Brooklyn, New York, and she has 3 children. She has Gregory, Sabrina, and Andre. Madeline was not the best mother. Madeline wasn't a good mother, actually, at all, by any means. These children, at least her last 2, I'm not 100% sure about Gregory. He was 16 at this time, so he could have potentially dealt with abuse growing up, but we really don't know. But what we do know is that Sabrina and Andre, they were severely abused. Madeline would burn them, she would beat them, and they were really just not allowed to have any type of childhood. They weren't allowed to go outside, they weren't allowed to have company, they weren't allowed to go to anyone else's house. Like, they were very much isolated from pretty much the rest of the world. Nobody was able to come see them, they weren't able to see anybody, and so yeah, it was just pretty much a life of misery for these kids. And as a result of this, they were shuffled in and out of foster care. They were taken away from Madeline and given back multiple times. So when Madeline's youngest son was 9 years old, at this particular time, they were back with their mom. They weren't in foster care or anything. They were living with Madeline, and I guess she had seemingly gotten her stuff together because they were living with her again. And while they were living with her, Andre had a visit with his aunt. Now, these visits, like I told y'all, Madeline had them shut out from the rest of the world and people wasn't coming in and they wasn't going out. But on this particular occasion, Andre, for whatever reason, was able to go and visit his auntie. And during this visit, his auntie was like, I haven't seen y'all in so long, nephew. How's everything going? I miss you guys. I love you guys. How's your sister? Like, how's the family? And Andre was like, oh, Sabrina's doing just fine. She's good, And the aunt was like, but I'm not talking about Sabrina. I'm talking about your twin. And he was like, twin? I got a twin? And that right there just blew his mind because he was unaware of said twin. And the aunt was like, yeah, you got a twin. When I first heard that, I was like, why didn't nobody think it was weird that he didn't know he had a twin? But then I had to stop and think, like, the kids were in and out of foster care and she could have been adopted. So I completely understand that. But anyhow, this intrigued Andre. So when he got home, he asked his mom, like, Mama, my auntie said I got a twin. Is that true? And so she just gave him this cold ass, like, how dare you ask me that type of look. And so Andre just walked away with no answers. But later on that evening, his mom was so mad that he asked him the question that he received a severe beating. So after the meeting with his aunt and the beating from his mom, Andre said that he started getting memories, like kind of flashes, if you will, of like himself and another baby, somebody around his age, somebody who like they were just sitting on the floor and they would be playing with each other. And these flashes would continue and just continue. At some point, he and his sister were put back into the foster care system, and I'm not sure if they saw their mother in between or not, but I do know that when Andre was 13 years old, on his birthday, he had a dinner with his mom, and he just had to freaking know. He had these memories, he had these like what do you want to say, visions, that there was another baby, there was somebody, and he had to know. So he asked his mama just flat out, like, look mom, do I got a twin? And she didn't ignore him this time. I mean, Andre by this time was 13 years old. He was bigger, probably stronger than he was at 9. And so she didn't ignore him. She just simply said, I'll tell you like this, little boy. I know somebody who looks like you, laugh like you, and talk like you, but I'll tell you more when you get older, basically. Now, that's not a direct quote. That's just me paraphrasing, but it went something like that. And he was still left feeling empty, like, that's not enough. That doesn't satisfy me. But nonetheless, he had to take it for what it was. She wasn't really divulging too much information, but he had gotten further than he did the last time. Now, moving along in the story, Andre is 23 years old. He has a wife. He has a 2 or 3 year old daughter. And I don't know if he hadn't seen his mom in a while or if his mom just hadn't met his daughter yet. But in one article that I read, it said that Andre was seeing his mom for the first time in a couple of years, and he had brought his 2 or 3 year old daughter with him. And when his mom saw her, she kind of just like, it was like she was disgusted for some reason. And he ended up talking to his aunt about it, and his aunt was like, well, she did that because your daughter has a very strong resemblance to your twin. And here's this twin again that the aunt keeps talking about. And Andre is just like, oh my God, this, like, what the hell, basically. And so he ends up having a dinner with his sister Sabrina, and he's like, listen, you got to tell me just straight up, do I have a twin or am I crazy? Because I keep having these visions of a baby playing with me. It's a girl and we're about the same age and we just, playing with each other. And then our auntie keeps saying that I have a twin. Like, what is going on? And so reluctantly, Sabrina's like, okay, here's the deal. Sabrina tells him that he did in fact have a twin sister, but she was murdered. She said that their mother was feeding his twin, and either she was sick or she was being overfed and she threw up. Now this enraged Madeline. Not only did it enrage Madeline, but it also enraged their brother Gregory, who was 16 years old at the time. Madeline and Gregory began to beat this poor baby, and they beat her until she was unconscious. Sabrina said that Madeline tried to resuscitate her, but she was unsuccessful, and Andre's twin died. Once she passed away, Madeline and Gregory wrapped her in plastic and put her into a bin. They called it a footlocker, and put her into a closet, never to be spoken of again. Andre said he was so conflicted when he heard this news because on one hand, he wanted to call the police and tell them like, hey, I have a twin sister. She was murdered by my mother and my brother. But then on the other hand, he was like, is this even true? Like, is everybody tripping? But something in his spirit and me, I don't know if y'all believe twin tuition or whatever the case may be, but I do believe that there's energy out there in the world, and I do believe that the energy of his sister was just like pushing him to just say something. So he did. With this information, Andre contacted the police and got in contact with their cold case department. Now, this would be a little bit strange because there was no initial case for it to have gone cold. So he was technically calling to report a crime, but it was still a cold case because it was a murder. It just hadn't been discovered yet, if that makes sense. The detective is kind of like, on one hand, is like, is this a whack job telling me that he had a twin sister who was murdered when they were little? He don't remember her at all, but his family keep mentioning it. Or is this a legit case that I need to look into? So the detective was a little bit skeptical, but in the end, he had a meeting with Sabrina and Andre, and he said that after that meeting, he knew that this just wasn't something that they made up. It was real, and that he needed to look into it. But the problem was, he had to figure out where to start, because the first things first, he got to make sure that this twin sister even really existed. So he went to the apartment complex where Madeline had been living, and he talked to the neighbors, and he talked to the super, and most people remembered the two younger children, but nobody remembered another young child. So that was kind of like a dead end, because nobody could confirm that there was another child. So the detective decided to go down to the Vital Records office to see if there was any record of this twin sister being born. When he went there, he found the birth certificate for Andre Carmichael, who was born on February 27, 1976. Not only did he find this birth certificate, but he found the birth certificate of the twin sister, who was also obviously born on February 27, 1976, 2:45 a.m., and she was the first of two children born that day to Madeline Carmichael. So, there it is, the proof that they needed that this sister existed. Her name is Latanisha Carmichael. So the next step would be to check medical records, school records, and dental records, just to see the span of her life, I guess. So when the detective went to go search medical records, school records, and dental records, there was nothing. There was no record of Latanisha besides the fact that she was born. However, these records were available for Andre. Now, while those records weren't available for Latanisha, there was one set of records that were available that piqued the detective's interest, and I bet y'all can guess which ones they were. And if you can't, I'll tell you. They were the welfare records. Welfare benefits have been collected for Latanisha from the time she was born up until 1988, which would be 6 years after they claimed she was passed away. So somebody had been collecting these welfare benefits, and I bet y'all know who it was. It was Madeline. It was Madeline, if you didn't know. Yes, she was collecting welfare benefits for Latanisha, this daughter who had no school records, no dental records, no record of ever being to the doctor, but somehow welfare benefits were being collected. It's interesting, isn't it? So boom, there it was. They had everything they needed. They obtained a search warrant, and they went to Madeline's apartment. When the detective got to the apartment, he pretty much started out by saying that he was looking for a lost child, and she was like, yeah, no children live here. All of my children are grown. So he rephrased, and he said, well, I'm looking for Latanisha. And Madeline said, and I quote, Latanisha is a 23-year-old woman. I haven't seen her in years. I bet you haven't. I bet you haven't seen her in about, let's say 20 years. Yeah. So in any event, she cooperated, and the detective was able to come in. I mean, she really didn't have a choice because he had a search warrant. So, yeah. So they went into the kitchen. She sat down, and she was just waiting for them, looking around, the apartment. So the detective started going to her bedroom. And baby, once he started going to that bedroom, she popped her little ass up like a Pop-Tart and started running after him, tried to grab him. And he was like, don't touch me. Don't touch me. I'm going to go look in his bedroom. When he got into the bedroom, he saw that it was pretty cluttered. It had like a set of bunk beds over here. It had like an armoire over here. It had her bed over there, and just stuff strewn about. But the thing that caught his eye was the armoire. Now, this armoire was blocking a closet. Now, if y'all know anything about New York, y'all know that an apartment is small already. And then y'all don't get much they don't give much closet space. And so he like, why would she be blocking the closet with an armoire instead of having it as an additional closet, I guess you would say. So he was like, let's see what's in this closet. The detective said that there were incense like stuck in the closet. And once he opened the closet, there were mothballs and baking soda in the closet, I guess to remove any stench that might come from said closet. And there was the Foot Locker that Sabrina and Andre had told him their sister was in. And sure enough, once he opened the Foot Locker, he seen the trash bags. He opened the trash bags and there were the remains of a 3-year-old Lannette Carmichael. She was also wrapped in newspaper dated for November 4th of 1979. Madeline Carmichael was arrested for the murder of her 3-year-old daughter, Lannette Carmichael. But remember, I told y'all, Sabrina said that it wasn't just Madeline who committed this murder. It was also their brother Gregory. Now Gregory was already in jail serving time on, I believe, a robbery charge, but they were still going to charge him anyways. They would charge Gregory with criminally negligent homicide. Madeline and Gregory. So Madeline and Gregory both pled not guilty to the charges, so they both went to trial. But this wasn't a jury trial. This was just a judge. I don't know what it's called, but there was no jury. The judge decided everything. So, like I said, they pled not guilty, but the judge would find them both guilty. And Madeline was sentenced to 15 years to life, and Gregory was sentenced to 1 1/3 to 4 years, which I was kind of pissed about, but then I had to realize he was only 16 when this happened. So he was probably just either following his mom's direction or doing what he had to do to not get beat himself. So I can understand that. So 2 years after Madeline was sentenced to 15 years to life, she actually ended up dying in prison of cancer, which I feel like is just, I don't know. I just felt like she should have served so much more time. She should have served the whole 15 years and then died the day she got out or something, because she was able to live her entire life pretty much outside of jail. She killed this baby when she was 3 years old for nothing. Not to mention she was an abusive ass mom. Like, the fact that she died irritated me. Like, and I know that sounds so mean and so harsh to say that, oh yeah, somebody died irritated you, but like, she should have suffered from cancer so much longer. Like, she should have suffered from that cancer those whole 15 years. I don't know. Anyways, she died in jail, and the saddest thing to me about this case is the fact that Lanette's memory legit only lives through Sabrina. Madeline is dead. The father wasn't around. I mean, Gregory probably remembers her, but what is that worth? Her twin brother don't remember her. Vaguely. I don't even know if there's pictures of her anywhere. I don't even know if her twin brother knows what she looks like for real. I don't know. But anyways. So yeah, guys, that's it for this case. Please let me know you like this type of content by liking, commenting, and subscribing. If y'all have any case suggestions that y'all want to see me talk about, that y'all want to see me cover, then just let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I will talk to you guys in the next one.